If your boss gave you a raise this year, I have bad news. You are still losing money. On Wednesday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the May inflation report. The number? 4.2%, the highest in 3 years. Higher than April, higher than March, higher than January. And here is the number nobody is putting next to it. Wages grew 3.4% over the same year. Do the subtraction. Every single working American just lost 0.7% of their real purchasing power for the second month in a row. Your raise did not keep up. It is mathematically impossible for it to have kept up. Today, we are going to show you exactly what is driving this number, why it is different from the inflation spike everyone remembers from 2022, and the moves that protect your money while the Fed decides what to do next, at a meeting happening this very week. Here's what makes this report particularly frustrating. This is not the broad, everything is expensive inflation of 2022. Strip out food and energy, and prices rose just 0.2% in May. That is the kind of number the Federal Reserve actually wants to see. So why does the headline number say 4.2%? One single category: energy. Energy prices accounted for more than 60% of the entire monthly increase in May. Gasoline alone rose 7% in a single month and is up 40.5% compared to a year ago. You are paying $4.31 a gallon on average right now. A year ago, it was $3.13. That is not a typo. That is not exaggeration. That is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the reason is not mysterious. The war in Iran has disrupted oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, the most important oil shipping lane on the planet. One geopolitical conflict on the other side of the world is directly responsible for the number sitting in your gas tank, your electricity bill, and ultimately your grocery cart. Because here is what almost nobody connects. Diesel fuel moves almost everything you buy. When diesel goes up, the cost of shipping your groceries goes up. Even though food prices only rose 0.2% this month, that relief will not last if energy stays this elevated. In January 2026, inflation was at 2.4%, close to the Fed's target. By March, 3.3%, the largest single-month jump since June 2022. April, 3.8%. May, 4.2%. 3 months, nearly 2 full percentage points. The fastest acceleration since the spring of 2022, when inflation was climbing toward its eventual peak of 8.9%. Here is the critical distinction that determines what happens next. Core inflation, which strips out food and energy, moved from 2.5% in January to just 2.9% in May. That is a small, manageable increase. Remember that 0.7% real wage loss from the beginning of this video? Almost all of it is coming from one place: the price of energy. Not because the broader economy is overheating, not because companies are raising prices everywhere, because oil is being squeezed through a choke point in the Middle East. This matters enormously for what comes next. If the Iran conflict resolves, energy prices could ease quickly, and headline inflation could fall sharply as soon as next month's report. Your real wages depend less on the Federal Reserve right now, and more on what happens in a shipping lane 8,000 miles away. This report landed at the worst possible moment for the Federal Reserve. The Federal Open Market Committee meets this week, June 17th and 18th, just days after this inflation data was released. This is new Fed Chair Kevin Warsh's first meeting in the role, and he is walking into an impossible decision. A 4.2% headline number, the highest in 3 years, makes raising rates look justified to fight inflation. But a core inflation rate of just 2.9% and a labor market already showing cracks makes raising rates look like it could tip a fragile economy into recession. The last Fed meeting saw 4 policymakers dissent from the decision, the most disagreement since 1992. The people setting interest rate policy for the entire country cannot agree on what to do. Which means uncertainty is not a temporary condition right now. It is the condition. And while the Fed debates, your money sits exposed in the middle. Credit card rates, mortgage rates, savings account yields, all waiting on a decision from a committee that cannot agree with itself. Which is exactly why you cannot afford to wait for clarity before acting. Here are 4 moves. All of them work whether the Iran conflict resolves quickly or drags on for months. Move 1. Track your real spending, not your salary. If you spend $2,000 to $3,000 a year on gasoline, the 40% increase from a year ago means $800 to $1,200 extra dollars annually, just at the pump. That is money that has to come from somewhere in your budget. Find it deliberately, through a spending review, rather than discovering it has quietly disappeared 3 months from now. Move 2. Lock in fixed-rate debt now, before the Fed's decision lands. If you have any variable rate debt, a HELOC, an adjustable rate mortgage, a variable personal loan, and you have the option to refinance into a fixed rate, this week's uncertainty is exactly the moment to consider it. Once the Fed's decision lands on the 18th, rates move immediately in one direction or the other. Move 3. Do not panic adjust your investment portfolio based on one inflation report. A single month of energy-driven inflation is not the same signal as broad, economy-wide inflation. Core inflation at 2.9% is a very different economic story than the headline 4.2% suggests. Investors who sold equities during the energy-driven inflation spikes of 2022 and missed the recovery that followed learned this lesson the expensive way. Stay invested. Stay diversified. Move 4. And this is the one most people will not think of. Watch the Strait of Hormuz, not just the Fed. Your next month of inflation depends more on geopolitical resolution in the Middle East than on anything the Federal Reserve decides this week. If you see news of a ceasefire or de-escalation, expect energy prices and headline inflation to ease within weeks. If the conflict continues or worsens, expect this elevated inflation to persist through the rest of 2026. Adjust your spending expectations based on that signal, not based on guessing what a divided Fed committee will decide. Your raise this year was real, but a geopolitical conflict on the other side of the world ate it before you ever saw the benefit. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to be precise about where your money goes next. Here is what the Bureau of Labor Statistics confirmed this week. Inflation hit 4.2% in May, the highest in 3 years. Wages grew 3.4% over the same period. That gap cost every working American 0.7% of real purchasing power for the second consecutive month. The cause? Energy. Specifically, gasoline, up 40.5% due to the Iran war disrupting the Strait of Hormuz. Core inflation, stripped of food and energy, sits at a much calmer 2.9%. The Fed meets this week, June 17th and 18th, with no clear consensus on what to do next. 4 moves protect you. Track your real spending, not your salary. Lock in fixed-rate debt before the Fed's decision lands. Do not panic adjust your portfolio over one report. And watch the Strait of Hormuz. It matters more than the Fed right now. Your paycheck did not get smaller. What it buys did. If this video helped you understand what is actually happening to your money right now, hit that subscribe button. Every week on First Million Club, we break down exactly these kinds of real money stories with real numbers before most people even know the full